part that you've all been looking forward to, I'm sure. The thing that I want to keep in mind right away is that this is animating as a loop, so it has to begin and end the same way. It has to look the same at the beginning and end, otherwise there'll be an obvious cut in the loop, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all my layers, and I know in my head, because of my pre-visualization process, that I just want rotation. That's the only thing that's going to animate on any of these main layers of the stems and leaves and stuff and the oranges. So I'm going to press R with all of these selected to reveal the rotation property. And I want to make keyframes for all of these here at 0 degree rotation. Because you remember, in order to make the first keyframe, I have to press this stopwatch, and then after that, I just move the values, right? So what I'm going to do is just go and press the stopwatch for the rotation for all of these layers at the beginning of the composition so that they're all set to 0. Right? Good enough. Now, I'm also going to go to the end, and I want 0 degree rotation keyframes for all these layers at the end, too, because of the loop, right? So, you'd think that I could just select all these keyframes and copy paste. But what happens, as you can see here, is that I paste every layer again, so you can't really do that, which is irritating. So what you'd have to do is like go through here and select these and copy paste them individually from each layer. But there's actually an easier way, which is this little button over here, which just means if you press this button, you're going to add a keyframe at whatever value this says already for that layer at whatever moment in time you're at. Okay, so in this case, that's exactly what I want. I want 0 rotation keyframes at the end, so I can just drag up and press that button. Okay, so as you remember from part 1, I have 2 keyframes, but I have no animation right now because the keyframe values are both the same. So as I scrub through this, there's no change. Right? Let's do something about that. I'm going to go to the middle of the comp somewhere. It doesn't really matter exactly where. Sort of in the middle. Now I want to start rotating all these things. Right? I'm going to start with the top stem. That's the driver of the action here. And when I rotate it this way, it rotates in positive numbers. And when I rotate this way, it rotates down into negative numbers. Right? So I actually think it looks nicer going in this direction. So I'm going to work with negative numbers for this layer. Right? So now I want subtle animation. I know we've said this over and over again. It's very tempting once you start animating to really make things move around a lot, but it's not going to look good. So I'm going to keep this really subtle. Like I'm going to make this negative 1.5 in terms of rotation. Right? And if we preview that, here's what it looks like. It's really subtle, okay? But that's what we want. So with that done, I'm going to just stay in this area where I've got these keyframes set. I'm going to set rotation keyframes now in the middle for all of these other layers. And mostly I'm just going to set them all to negative 1.5, okay? And I just want a very subtle animation. Let me preview what that looks like just with those 2 layers. You can start to see now, it's bringing some life into this because they have separate motion and you can really feel that, right? All right, so let's go ahead and just do this for everything. So for this leaf here, I'm just going to make this negative 1, all right? Subtle animation. For this leaf here, okay, I think this one, I'm just kind of thinking about this, I think it can rotate in the opposite direction. It's just 1 that I think can rotate in the opposite direction. So I'm going to say 1.5, positive 1.5. All right, we'll see what it looks like. Maybe I'll change my mind a little bit. All right, for this leaf, again, just negative 1.5. I think would be good. And I could change this all later once I preview it. For the clementine, this has a little bit more weight to it than the leaf, so I'm going to say negative 2. And for this one, I'll say negative 1.5. I don't know. I'm just kind of making this up as I go. But let's just look at what this looks like right now. Okay? So it's definitely swinging in the loop, and it's subtle. So we've kind of achieved something, right? Now, one thing that bothers me is that this leaf doesn't move. It sort of feels very much connected in lockstep to this orange because it's rotating, I think, the same amount. Let me go to the middle here to see what my value is. Yeah, so let me change this. Or let me, let me change this leaf. Okay, let me just make this like negative 0.5. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, I think that's good. It's just a little subtle. Now, what I'll say right away when I look at this animation is that it's kind of got all the right pieces, but it feels robotic. It feels wrong. And the reason why is because all of these keyframes right now are linear. They're what's known as linear keyframes in After Effects. And what this means is that in between keyframe A and keyframe B, it moves the object at a constant rate, okay, in between the second keyframe and the third keyframe. It's always moving things at constant rates between the keyframes, and nothing in real life moves that way. In real life, if I were to move my hand from here to here, first it would sort of ease out of that, and then it would kind of ease into the final position. It's just how things move organically. They don't just start moving on a dime and move at their ultimate speed and then just stop on it. They ease out and they ease in, okay? So After Effects has a built-in function to help us with this. I'm going to select these keyframes here, and then these keyframes here, okay? And then I'm going to right-click on a keyframe and go to Keyframe Assistant, and here you go, Easy Ease, or the beloved shortcut F9. I'm going to press that now, all right? And now you see the diamond-shaped keyframes have turned into these hourglass-shaped keyframes, and let's just preview that to see what the difference is. Yeah, and I think you can see right away, the action feels much better. It just feels more organic. It's just the way, it's just much closer to how things would swing in real life, all right? So Easy Ease is really going to be your friend for these subtle animations. So now it's time for me to move on to the last two elements, the type and the background, and I have to go kind of quickly here because I'm running out of time. So let me jump into my type, all right, and let me explain something that's really awesome. If you have live type from Photoshop, that was live in Photoshop, in After Effects it's no longer like a live type layer, but you can convert it really easily by right-clicking and go to Create, and then Convert to Editable Text. Now it's like editable text that I can type something else in there, so that's really useful, especially because of this next step. What I want to do is put an effect preset, like a pre-animated element on this type. There's some really awesome effects and presets in this window, effects and presets. You could also go to Window, Effects and Presets, and open it there, okay? It gives you this little search bar, and then I'm going to type typewriter in there, or start to type typewriter. Then you can see there's an animation preset named typewriter. If I grab this and drag this down on top of my type layer, right now it's disappeared, and if I press U, you can see, oh, and by the way, U, the shortcut U is the universal keyboard shortcut to reveal all animated properties. Right? So that's really useful. So here I have an end state of the animation, and a beginning state of the animation, and an end state. So if I move these two closer together and then preview this for you, you can see that the word Clementines just kind of types itself on there. That's really useful, really great tip for social media posts, the typewriter preset. Anyway, I'm also going to go to the end here, and I'm going to copy this and paste it there, and then copy the first keyframe and paste it there so it like types itself back off at the end, okay? Moving rather quickly, what I also want to do is fade the word figure one on, so I'm going to animate the opacity, so I'm going to press T to reveal the opacity property. I'm going to make a 100% opacity keyframe by pressing the stopwatch. You remember that now. Now I can go back to the beginning and just dial this down to 0. I'm going to do the same thing at the end as I did on the Clementines, where I just kind of copy this 100% keyframe here, and then just dial this back down to 0 at the end, so that now fades up and fades out. Pretty simple animation. And then finally, I want to talk about this line here. I want to draw this on, or have it look like this is drawing itself on, and I want to use a mask, which is not something I've talked about yet, so let me quickly go into this. If I go up here to my toolbar, I've got a rectangle tool that's pretty similar to the one in Photoshop and Illustrator. The keyboard shortcut is Q, but forget about that. If I choose this, okay, and I have my line selected, if I marquee over this, now you can see I'm just drawing it on screen. So basically, if I set the mask over here with it off, okay, and then After Effects automatically opens the mask property, so otherwise you can press M to reveal that. And what I want to do is I want to animate the mask path. So I'm going to press this here, okay, to make a mask path keyframe where it's kind of off. I'm going to move to where these other keyframes are. I'm going to press V to get my V arrow. Now I'm going to kind of carefully select just the end 2 points of the mask and drag this over until it gets to the end, which is right there actually. So now I've created a mask animation that just draws that line on like that. That's pretty cool. And just like the other pieces, I'm going to copy this here and go to the end and paste the off mask state at the end as well. Right? So now let me go back to my main comp and let's watch this all together. Yeah, and you can see right away that that's like really fun. Okay, so moving on, because I am running out of time here, I'm going to animate the grit in the background really quickly. Now, basically for these scatter dots for this texture here, I want this kind of like gritty old movie projector kind of staccato animation. It's like, okay, and there's actually a kind of keyframe in After Effects that will do this. It's called a hold keyframe. Let me demo this for you. I'm going to press P to reveal my position. I'm going to make a position keyframe here. I'm going to move forward 10 frames by hitting Shift and page down. Okay, so I'm at frame 10. Now, what I want is for this to have like shifted over, just say like here. But as you remember, in After Effects, it will put the animation between those two keyframe states, and we don't want that. We want it to hold one state until it reaches the next state, and then we want it to just switch all at once and hold that state, okay? In After Effects, those are called hold keyframes, so check it out. Right now, it's animating between them. But if I select both of these keyframes, both of them, and I right-click here, I can go to Toggle Hold Keyframe. Toggle just means turn on and off like a light switch, right? So basically we've just turned these on to become hold keyframes. So now it holds this value until it gets here, and then it switches, right? And that's just what we want. So I'm gonna move another 10 frames, and I'm just gonna move this over here. I'm gonna move another 10 frames, and I'm gonna put it over there. Another 10 frames here, another 10 frames here. And basically I just wanna get to right here, which is 10 frames, I think, for the end of the comp. Yep, so now it'll create a nice loop. Okay, so now I can just look at this back in my main comp and preview this. Yeah, and I think this looks totally charming and awesome. The one final note I would say is that now that we have motion on the background grid, it's more present than I think Sarabeth wanted it to be, or that's how it feels to me. It steals a little bit of attention from the type. So I'm gonna get into my background. I'm just gonna press T to reveal the opacity of this. I'm just gonna not animate this. I'm just gonna set this down to like 50%. Okay, so it's a little bit lighter on screen, and then let's look at that. Yeah, I think that looks really charming. It's just a little less present, right? I just noticed one thing which I think can make this animation a little bit stronger. I'm gonna display the rotation of all these layers, okay? And right now, all of these keyframes in the middle are in the same exact moment in time. And in real life, nothing would ever move so that it's like exactly locked into everything else like that. If we want to give this a slightly more organic feeling in the animation, all I'd have to do is kind of redistribute these keyframes a little bit in the middle here, and it would create a kind of looser feeling to the animation, right? So check this out. Just gonna move this back a couple of frames and this. Just want to make sure that like all these things happen, you know, just at slightly different points. I mean, when it turns, when it changes direction, okay? It's a small thing, but check out the difference now. Yeah, I think this just goes a long way to giving it that extra little bit of organic flair, and now I feel like this is really done. As you remember from part 3, once the animation is done, now it's time to render, which basically just means to take what's in After Effects and turn it into a tangible thing like a QuickTime movie or an animated GIF that you could post on Instagram. So as you remember from part 3, I'm just going to go up to Composition, Add to Adobe Media Encoder Q, or Option Command M is the shortcut. Okay, so this is the correct animation, Fruits of the Trade. And like I explained earlier in part 3, it's basically going to give whatever the last render settings that you had on there automatically. So in this case, it's given it an animated GIF setting. Just in case this wasn't clear or you missed part 3, all you have to do is pull this down and find the animated GIF, and that should be okay. In this case, we don't need to press this button because we want it 1500 by 1500, which is exactly the way the source is. So we just want to keep everything the way that it was. And then finally, I'm just going to click in here and give it a name and find a good place to put this, right here, okay? I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to go ahead and press the button to start rendering. And basically, at this point, you know, we're all done, and we're just waiting for that special render chime noise, which means we're done. And there it is. Now I'm going to just go ahead and click on this little link here, and let's preview the animation. Yeah, I love this. I think this looks really fun and really subtle and has a lot of life to it. So awesome. And with that, we are really, really done. I just want to thank Sarabeth Morgan again and say that I think we did a really great job in this lab. In these last 2 hours, we basically walked you from design concepting all the way through design and illustration and into technical rigging and animation and all the way through how to render for social media. I think we covered a lot, and I'm really hoping this is going to be really useful to getting you started on bringing some life to your animation. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all the Adobe people for making this possible, and this was really great, so thank you again.